My name is Eleanor, and I never saw this moment coming. For years I believed that family meant loyalty, that love meant security. I built a home, my home, with the man I thought I knew. But betrayal has a way of creeping in unnoticed. For 30 years, my home was my sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed through hallways, where family gathered for holidays, where I built a life with the man I loved. I never imagined that one day, the very walls that held my happiest memories would be signed away without a second thought. There was no discussion, no warning, just a cold, indifferent transaction. My own children, the people I had raised and sacrificed for, handed over my house to a woman who had stood in the shadows of my marriage, the woman they now called their stepmother. But she wasn't just some stranger. She was my husband's secretary, the one I never suspected, the one who had lingered just a little too long in his office, the one who, for years, had kept secrets I never saw coming. Betrayal dripped through every corner of the home I once cherished, and for the first time I realized I had been erased. Not anymore. This story was getting a rewrite. Now I was the one taking back control. Now they would see what happens when a woman refuses to fade into the background. The reckoning had begun, and no one, not my children, not my husband's mistress, was prepared for what was coming next. Call to action, drop your city below. We want to see how far this story has reached. And the people I trusted most, my own children? They handed my home over to her, the woman who had lurked in the shadows of my marriage, not just a stranger, not just some new stepmother, no. She was my husband's secretary, the woman who had always been there, quietly waiting, and now she had everything. My home, my family, my past. But if they thought I was going to fade away, they were wrong. This story isn't over yet, and they have no idea what's coming next. For months, I had watched from the sidelines, buried beneath quiet endurance, drowning in their whispered betrayals. Not anymore. Vanessa had stolen my marriage, but she wasn't going to steal my home. The day I found out my children had signed over my house to the woman who dismantled everything I built, something inside me snapped. I wasn't grieving anymore. I wasn't a quiet casualty of their convenience. I was a woman with nothing left to lose. The confrontation didn't come in screams. It didn't come in slammed doors or bitter pleas for fairness. No. It came with cold, calculated precision, the way only a woman who has spent decades enduring could deliver. The morning was crisp, painfully ironic given the fire burning inside me. I didn't call. I didn't knock. I walked straight into the house that was rightfully mine. Vanessa was seated at the breakfast table, perfectly poised, her manicured nails clicking against her porcelain mug. She barely blinked when she saw me. "Eleanor," she greeted smoothly, as though I were just some guest. "You should have called first." I let out a low laugh, humourless. "Call? You mean like when you called my children and had them sign away my house? That kind of call?" Her smile didn't falter. It wasn't personal. It was my home. I held her gaze, unwavering. "That makes it personal," she sighed, setting down her mug. "You knew this was coming. Richard has moved on. Your children have moved on. Maybe it's time you do the same." The audacity. The sheer, unapologetic entitlement. I leaned forward just slightly. "You think you've won, don't you?" Her lips curled upward. "I think I've settled into my new life quite nicely, yes." I let the silence stretch between us. Let her revel in her victory. Then, slowly, deliberately, I placed the folder on the table. Vanessa frowned, her hand hesitating before reaching for it. She flipped it open, her expression shifting just slightly, just enough for me to know she wasn't expecting this. "Eleanor is no longer a victim. She is the reckoning." I didn't call. I didn't knock. I walked straight into the house that was rightfully mine. Vanessa sat at the breakfast table, legs crossed, a silk robe draped over her shoulders like she belonged there. Her manicured nails tapped against the porcelain mug, the sound grating, precise, indifferent. She barely blinked when she saw me. "Eleanor," she greeted smoothly, as if I were just some forgotten acquaintance. "You should have called first." I let out a sharp, humourless laugh, cold as the air between us. "Call? Like when you called my children and had them sign away my house? That kind of call?" Her smile didn't falter, perfectly composed, perfectly arrogant. It wasn't personal. I stepped forward, hands pressed against the back of the chair opposite her, fingers curling around the wood. It was my home. My voice didn't waver. That makes it personal. She sighed, setting her cup down like this conversation was nothing more than an inconvenience. Eleanor, really, you knew this was coming. Richard has moved on. Your children have moved on. Maybe it's time you do the same. My grip tightened, the audacity, the sheer entitlement dripping from her words. You think you've won, don't you? She tilted her head, that same polished grin still plastered on her face. I think I've settled in quite nicely, yes. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I let the silence stretch between us, let her revel in her victory. Then, slowly, deliberately, I placed the folder on the table. I sat across from James Wilson, my fingers gripping the edge of the chair as he flipped through the documents with practiced ease. The air in his office was still, heavy with the weight of betrayal that had settled in my bones over the last few months. James paused, tapping a finger against the power of attorney form. Eleanor, what they pulled here isn't just manipulative, it's fraudulent, and if we push the right angles, we can have the deed nullified. My breath was measured, calm in a way that felt unnatural given the fire burning beneath my skin. So this wasn't airtight? He looked at me, his expression shifting into something sharper. No. And if they thought they could bury you under legal jargon, they underestimated you. My grip on the chair tightened. Good. I drove straight to my house, the house that still bore my name no matter what twisted paperwork they had forced through. The driveway felt foreign, like stepping onto someone else's property, but I refused to acknowledge that thought. I didn't knock. I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked through the front door as though it had never been taken from me. Vanessa sat at the kitchen island, her pristine silk robe cascading over her shoulder, a crystal glass of wine resting between manicured fingers. She barely blinked when she saw me. Eleanor, she mused, setting down her glass. You should have called first. A laugh ripped from my throat, cold and humourless. Call? Like when you called my children and had them sign my house over to you? That kind of call? Her smile remained intact, untouched, as if she had rehearsed every possible reaction to this moment. It wasn't personal. I stepped forward, standing across from her, hands pressed against the marble countertop. It was my home, I said steadily. That makes it personal. She sighed, tilting her head in mock pity. You knew this was coming. Richard has moved on. Your children have moved on. Maybe you should too. The audacity, the sheer, unrelenting arrogance. My fingers curled against the stone, grounding myself against the rage that threatened to boil over. You think you've won, don't you? She gave me that same polished grin. I think I've settled in quite nicely, yes. I let the silence stretch between us, let her bask in her own delusion. Then, slowly, deliberately, I placed a folder on the counter. Vanessa's hand hesitated before reaching for it. She flipped it open, and just like that, the ease in her expression faltered. The moment James said the words fraudulent transfer, everything shifted. This wasn't just an unethical move on Thomas and Richard's part. It was illegal. And Vanessa? She was wrapped up in it just as deeply. My house, my legacy, had been signed away for a mere $1. An insult disguised as paperwork. I clenched my jaw, inhaling slowly. We have grounds, then, to reverse this. James gave me a sharp nod. Legally, yes. The price alone raises serious questions about the legitimacy of this transfer. It's not just shady, it's suspicious. My grip tightened around the chair's armrest. Then let's tear it apart. That evening, as I sat in my bare apartment, the sterile walls pressing in around me, my phone rang. Thomas, predictable. Mum, he barked the moment I answered. What the hell is this injunction? Dad and Vanessa were in the middle of tearing out the kitchen when they got served. How unfortunate, I said evenly, not bothering to feign sympathy. Maybe they shouldn't have started renovations on a house they don't legally own. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You signed a legally binding power of attorney. The transfer is valid. That's for a judge to decide, I countered. And in the meantime, they should stop destroying my property. It's not your property anymore, Thomas spat. Why are you being so difficult? We found you a nice place close to the hospital. Most mothers would be grateful their children were looking out for them. I let out a sharp laugh, the sheer audacity of his words igniting something inside me. Looking out for me? You stole my home, the home I cared for 30 years, and handed it over to your father's mistress. How exactly is that looking out for me? He hesitated. The house was too big for you, Mum. The maintenance was becoming a burden. This was a practical decision. I exhaled slowly, rage curling beneath my ribs. A practical decision would have been selling the house at market value and giving me the proceeds. Instead, you gave it away for $1. Silence. Then his voice dropped, uncertain. Who told you it was $1? My attorney, I said. And unlike you, he's actually representing my interests. Mum, be reasonable, Thomas pleaded, but his tone had changed. He knew he had underestimated me. Dad's corporate lawyers will bury you in paperwork. You'll drain your savings on this lawsuit. There's no winning against him. I smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Let them try. He inhaled sharply. Mum? Oh, and Thomas? I interrupted, my voice deceptively calm. How's your father handling the news about the keynote address? Confusion flickered in his silence. What keynote address? The International Pediatric Oncology Nursing Conference next month, I said, letting the weight of the revelation settle over him. I'm the keynote speaker. More silence. The kind that held tension like a knife poised above a throat. That's not possible, he finally stammered. Dad developed that protocol. His company funded that research. I laughed. A real, unrestrained laugh. Is that what he told you? Carter Enterprises never had a research division, Thomas. I developed that protocol. I worked on it nights and weekends while raising you and Amanda. Your father just took credit. I don't believe you, Thomas said, but his voice had changed. The cracks in his certainty were beginning to show. You don't have to believe me, I said, leaning back against the couch. The hospital has the documentation. So does the medical board. So do the journals where I published the research under a pseudonym, because your father insisted it would confuse clients if people knew I was the actual innovator behind it. Another long pause. Then, quietly, like he didn't want to say the words, if that's true, why are you only bringing this up now? I inhaled. This was it, the moment of reckoning. For 30 years, I put my family's needs ahead of my own recognition, I said, voice steady, unshaken. I let your father take credit because I believed it would help his business, help support our family. I kept quiet to keep peace in our marriage. I downplayed my accomplishments so Richard's ego wouldn't be bruised. I leaned forward slightly. But now, you've taken my home. You've dismissed my career. You've treated me like some disposable elderly woman to be tucked away in a retirement community. I let the words sink in before delivering the final blow. So I've decided it's finally time to set the record straight. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Mum, Thomas finally whispered, you need to think about what you're doing. If this goes public, Dad's company could suffer. I smiled again. Slow, deliberate, unapologetic. I've thought about it very carefully, I said. In fact, I've been thinking about nothing else since you and Amanda signed away my home. And then I ended the call. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't thinking about how my actions would affect Richard or my children. I was thinking about justice. And maybe, just maybe, a little well-earned vengeance. The conference was only 2 weeks away. The court hearing for the injunction was scheduled the following month. The Wilkins Foundation was preparing their public announcement about my research grant, and soon an entire hospital wing would bear my name. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Eleanor the nurse, Eleanor the mother, Eleanor the wife. I was Eleanor Anderson, the innovator, the fighter, the woman reclaiming what was stolen from her, and I was just getting started. The morning of the International Pediatric Oncology Nursing Conference arrived crisp and clear, autumn air sharpening my senses as I dressed. I studied my reflection in the mirror, smoothing the lapels of the charcoal grey suit Patricia had convinced me to buy. You're not just a nurse today, she had said, dragging me through designer racks weeks ago. You're a keynote speaker, a researcher, an innovator about to reclaim her rightful recognition. I barely recognized myself. The tailored suit, the sleek bob that framed my silver-streaked hair, the pearl earrings Olivia had gifted me, they all painted the picture of a woman stepping into her power. The transformation felt surreal. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Car will pick you up in 20 minutes. Ready to make history?" I smiled and replied, "As ready as I'll ever be." The conference was being held at the gleaming Harrington Medical Centre, a facility known for its cutting-edge research. As my hired car pulled up to the entrance, I spotted news vans, photographers, far more press than these conferences typically attracted. "Dr. Jenkins arranged additional coverage," Emily, the hospital's PR coordinator, explained as she met me at the entrance. "The story of the Helen Protocol is generating significant interest." "The Helen Protocol," I repeated, rolling the words over my tongue. "It still feels strange after all these years." Emily smiled. "It feels right." We walked through the bustling corridors, past colleagues, former students, researchers, people who had unknowingly built their work upon mine. Some stopped to congratulate me, their expressions mixtures of admiration and curiosity. How had I remained in the background for so long? I didn't offer explanations. Then just as I turned a corner, my breath caught. Amanda. She stood in the hallway looking hesitant, uncomfortable in a sea of medical professionals who had come to hear my story. She made a small, uncertain gesture, not quite a wave, more of a recognition. I met her eyes, but didn't stop walking. Whatever she wanted could wait until after my presentation. The main hall was packed, over 1,000 attendees seated, more standing along the walls. A massive screen behind the podium displayed the words, "The Helen Protocol, Revolutionizing Pain Management in Pediatric Oncology." Dr. Eliza Montgomery, the conference chair, stepped onto the stage. "For decades, a revolutionary approach to pain management has improved the lives of countless young cancer patients worldwide," she began. "Today we have the honor of hearing from its creator, Helen Anderson, a dedicated healthcare professional whose innovative work has remained largely uncredited until now." Thunderous applause filled the room. I approached the podium, scanning the audience. Amanda sat near the back. Thomas, near the middle, inscrutable. And though I didn't spot him, I knew Richard was here, somewhere, watching as his empire began to crack. "Thank you, Doctor." "Montgomery," I began, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "For 30 years I have worked as a pediatric oncology nurse. Like many of you, I have held the hands of children facing unimaginable pain. I have comforted parents in their darkest hours, and I have searched constantly for ways to make the unbearable slightly more bearable." I inhaled, the weight of decades pressing against my ribcage. 25 years ago, I began developing what would become known as the Carter Protocol." The murmurs in the room were subtle, but present. Richard's carefully woven lie was beginning to unravel. I clicked to advance the slides, revealing old research notes, dated, signed, by me. "For various personal reasons, I allowed this work to be credited to Carter Enterprises as a charitable initiative," I continued. I remained in the background as the protocol gained recognition and was implemented globally. But today, I am here to reclaim my work. For the next 45 minutes, I broke down the research, the documented results, the patient stories. I never directly attacked Richard. This wasn't about vengeance. This was about truth. It was about setting the record straight. As I finished, applause exploded across the hall. This time, it wasn't just polite. It was powerful, undeniable, real. "Doctor." Montgomery approached the podium again, her expression deeply moved. "Helen, on behalf of the International Pediatric Oncology Nursing Association, we are honored to present you with our Lifetime Achievement Award." A crystal plaque was placed in my hands. I hadn't known it was coming. My throat tightened. It meant more than I could express. As I stepped off the stage, Amanda intercepted me in the hallway. "Mom," she breathed, voice thick with emotion. "Can we talk, just for a minute?" I glanced at Emily, who nodded. "You have 5 minutes before the press conference." Amanda's eyes were red-rimmed, her usual composure faltering. "Was that all true?" she whispered. "Did you really develop that protocol yourself? Did Dad really take credit for it all these years?" I held her gaze. Every word was true. She swallowed hard. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I exhaled slowly. "Would you have believed me?" Her silence stretched between us, thick with realization. "Thomas said it was the right thing to do," she mumbled. "That you'd be safer in a community with support services." My voice remained steady. And you believed him. She dropped her eyes. He's a lawyer. He said the paperwork was legitimate. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Legitimate doesn't mean ethical, Amanda, and it certainly doesn't mean right. She blinked rapidly, trying to process, trying to rewrite what she thought she knew. But I didn't have time to hold her hand through this realization. I have a press conference to attend, I said, stepping past her. For the first time, my daughter looked at me, not as her aging mother, but as the force that would unravel everything she thought was true. Eleanor Anderson has reclaimed the truth. The paperwork may have been legally binding in the strictest sense, but the intent behind it was anything but, I explained, keeping my gaze steady on Amanda. You can't use a power of attorney to enrich yourself at my expense. That's financial exploitation, Amanda. She paled, her fingers tightening at her sides. That's not what we were trying to do. Maybe not consciously, I conceded, but the effect is the same. You took something of immense financial and emotional value from me, without my consent, and handed it over to your father and his new wife. Emily approached discreetly, tapping her watch to indicate our time was up. My press conference awaited. I have to go, I told Amanda. Mom, please. She reached for my arm. How can we fix this? Vanessa says they'll buy you another house, anywhere you want. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. This isn't about another house. This is about respect, autonomy, and recognizing that at 62, I am still capable of making my own decisions. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I'm sorry, Amanda, but I'm done allowing other people to define my worth. Her lips parted, searching for something, anything that would change my mind. But I didn't have time to give her the answers she wanted. If you want to make this right, I continued, you need to start by admitting that what you did wasn't just inconvenient, it was wrong. Amanda didn't respond. I turned and walked toward the press conference. This time, I wasn't looking back. The press room was a blur of flashing cameras, microphones, and rapid-fire questions. I formally announced my acceptance of the Wilkins Foundation grant and the naming of the Helen Anderson Wing for Pediatric Pain Management. The room buzzed with murmurs and excitement. For decades, I prioritized the needs of others above my own recognition, I stated. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter, one where I fully embrace my contributions to pediatric medicine. A reporter raised her hand. Mrs. Anderson, Carter Enterprises has long taken credit for the protocol. How do you respond to their claims? I smiled, keeping my voice controlled. I can only speak to the factual record, which clearly documents my development of this approach. I gestured toward the official hospital statement projected behind me. The hospital board has issued a formal statement correcting the historical record, I continued. I believe that speaks for itself. No further explanation was needed. The truth was loud enough. By the time I returned to the Craftsman House that evening, exhaustion weighed on me. But it wasn't the familiar, suffocating kind of exhaustion I had carried for decades. This was different. This was triumphant. Patricia and Olivia had arranged a quiet celebration, a dinner with warm lighting, soft music, and wine poured into glasses before I had even stepped inside. James arrived late, holding several newspapers in his hands, his expression carrying the satisfaction of a man delivering good news. The story is everywhere, he announced, laying the papers on the coffee table. The Boston Globe's headline stood out among them. Nurse reclaims groundbreaking medical protocol after decades in the shadows. I skimmed the front pages, scanning the business publications, the medical journals. Even the mainstream news outlets were covering it. Any response from Richard? I asked, sipping my wine. James grinned. Their PR team released a weak statement about reviewing historical records and acknowledging all contributors. But the damage control isn't working. How bad is it? Patricia asked, leaning forward. James set his glass down. Bad. 2 government agencies have already suspended contract negotiations. Carter Enterprises stock dropped 8% by closing today. Olivia laughed. Poetic justice. I tilted my head. And the house? James smirked. That's the best part. Richard's attorneys called late this afternoon. I leaned forward, waiting. They'll reverse the transfer completely. Return the house to your name. A beat of silence. And? And they'll pay for the restoration of all the renovations they started. No non-disclosure agreement, no financial settlement, they're conceding. Patricia exhaled sharply. Richard must really be drowning. James nodded. He knows that ship has sailed. There's nothing left to salvage. His reputation, his company, it's crumbling. I inhaled deeply, the weight on my shoulders finally lifting. Then James added something else. Oh, and Thomas recused himself from representing his father in this matter. I raised an eyebrow. Why? James folded his hands. There were concerns about conflicts of interest given his role in the original transfer. He's trying to distance himself. Or he's developing a conscience, Olivia mused. I scoffed. Too little, too late. The next morning there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Thomas standing there, looking worn, holding a thick folder under his arm. May I come in? He asked formally. I hesitated. Then, without a word, I stepped aside. We settled in the living room, sunlight spilling through the bay windows, illuminating the conflict written across his face. I've been reviewing the power of attorney situation, he began, placing the folder on the table. There are irregularities I wasn't fully aware of when we executed the transfer. I raised an eyebrow. Irregularities? The document you signed was broad, but not unlimited. He flipped through a few pages. It required that any property transfers be in your best financial interest. A $1 transfer to family members? He sighed. That doesn't meet that standard. I crossed my arms. And you're just realizing this now. Thomas looked down for a moment before answering. I convinced myself we were doing what was best for you. The house was large. You were alone. Vanessa kept insisting you'd struggle as you got older. He trailed off. Did it ever occur to you to ask what I wanted? Silence. No, he admitted finally. And that was wrong. I'm sorry, Mum. His apology was unexpected. I studied him carefully. For the first time, he wasn't speaking as Richard's son or Vanessa's ally. He was speaking as himself. The house transfer will be reversed this week, he continued. Dad will pay for restoration and cover your legal expenses. I narrowed my eyes. Just like that? Not exactly, he sighed. Dad's company is in serious trouble. His lawyers advised him that fighting you would make things worse. I leaned back against the couch. So it's not about doing the right thing. It's about damage control. Thomas nodded. Yes. His voice softened. But for me, it's more complicated. I raised an eyebrow, waiting. I was proud of you yesterday, he admitted finally. I held his gaze. For the first time in years, he finally saw me, the woman I had always been. Thomas's words echoed in my mind long after he left. What you've accomplished is incredible. I sat on the porch swing, the late afternoon breeze brushing against my skin as I processed everything. His apology seemed genuine, but I couldn't shake the question. Would he have ever recognized the betrayal without public scrutiny forcing him to? I wasn't sure. My phone rang, breaking my train of thought. Jenkins. Helen, I hope I'm not interrupting, he said, his tone warm, professional. I wanted to follow up on our conversation about the new position. Of course, I replied, sitting up straighter. What did you have in mind? The board has approved the creation of a new role, Director of Innovation in Pediatric Care. I blinked, caught off guard. That sounds significant. It is, he confirmed. It would involve overseeing research initiatives, mentoring staff on developing new care protocols, and representing the hospital at conferences and in publications. A slow smile spread across my face. You want me for the position? We do, Jenkins said. It comes with a substantial salary increase, a dedicated research budget, and the flexibility to work with the Wilkins Foundation simultaneously. In essence, we're acknowledging that your contributions deserve more than your current role allows. The words struck deep, an acknowledgement of everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed, everything I had earned. I'm honoured, I said sincerely. When would this start? As soon as you're ready, though I understand you have personal matters to resolve first. I nodded, a quiet laugh escaping my lips. Yes, the house situation is finally moving toward resolution. Take the time you need, Jenkins assured me. The position will be here whenever you are. Later that afternoon, James called. The transfer reversal papers are ready, he announced. We can sign them tomorrow. I let out a slow breath. So soon? Richard's attorneys are pushing to resolve this before it generates even more negative press, James explained. Also, they've included a formal apology acknowledging that the original transfer was executed without your full understanding or consent. I arched a brow. An apology? A written one. Not good enough, I thought. But I wasn't going to argue. I wanted my house back, not their hollow words. Will I need to see Richard or Vanessa at the signing? No, James assured me. They've completed their portion separately. A wave of relief washed over me. Good. And the renovation damage? They've agreed to pay for complete restoration. They've already contacted contractors who specialise in historical homes. I exhaled slowly, finally feeling the weight lifting. The next morning I sat in James's office and signed the papers, officially reclaiming ownership of my home. I should have felt victorious, euphoric. But my emotions were complicated. Yes, I had won. The house was mine again. Yes, my professional contributions had finally been recognised, and my future suddenly held limitless possibilities. But my relationships with my children, damaged. Possibly irreparably so. As I drove to Lakeside Heights to inspect the renovation damage, memories of the past month flooded my mind. I had gone from powerless to standing in my own strength. I had fought. I had won. But at what cost? Had my pursuit of justice veered into vengeance? Martin Dyer, the contractor, met me at the front door. Mrs. Anderson, he greeted me respectfully. I understand you'd like to review the property before we begin restoration. Yes, I confirmed. I need to see everything. The tour was both better and worse than I had feared. The kitchen, completely gutted. My carefully restored cabinets, gone. The breakfast nook where I had served countless meals, demolished. The bathroom, destroyed. The clawfoot tub I had refinished with my own hands, replaced by a half-installed shower. I inhaled, steadying myself. Can it be restored? I asked. Martin nodded. Absolutely. We specialise in historical homes. We've reviewed before photos. We can rebuild everything down to the cabinet handles. How long? 6 to 8 weeks. I exhaled. I could wait. I'd like to be involved in every decision, I told him. This house has been my life's work alongside my nursing career. Every detail matters to me. Martin nodded, his tone respectful. Of course, Mrs. Anderson. As I stepped outside, a familiar car pulled up. Amanda. She stepped out hesitantly, uncertainty written all over her face. I thought you might be here, she said carefully. Thomas told me the transfer was reversed. I nodded. It's official. Can we talk? She asked softly. Please. I hesitated, then gestured to the stone bench in the front garden. The same bench Richard and I had placed there when we first bought the house. The same bench where I had read stories to Thomas and Amanda when they were children. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then Amanda spoke. I don't know where to start. Her voice cracked slightly. I've been thinking about everything. The house, your work, the fact that Dad took credit for your research for all those years. I nodded, waiting, letting her sit in the weight of that realization. Why didn't you fight back sooner? She asked. Why let Dad claim your work? I exhaled, giving her the truth. For the same reason I worked night shifts to pay for your study abroad program, I said gently. For the same reason I sold my grandmother's jewellery to fund your education. Her breath hitched. I put my family's needs above my own. Amanda's eyes brimmed with tears. And we repaid you by taking your house. I met her gaze. Yes. I'm so sorry, Mum. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I never stopped to think about what you actually wanted. I studied her, weighing my response. That's the heart of it, I told her. You all decided what was best for me, without ever asking me. Amanda wiped at her eyes. We were wrong. I nodded. Yes, you were. Silence stretched between us. What happens now? Amanda finally asked. I thought about it, and then I told her the truth. I'm not the same person I was a month ago, Amanda. I've rediscovered parts of myself that I set aside for decades. Our relationship needs to evolve. Amanda swallowed. I'd like that. I reached over and squeezed her hand, not fully ready to forgive, but willing to open the door. I stared at the house, my house. It was still in ruins, the gutted kitchen and torn-out fixtures serving as stark reminders of everything that had happened. Yet, like the house, I too was rebuilding. For the first time in decades, I was living life on my own terms, not as someone's wife, not as a mother first, but as Eleanor Anderson, in full possession of her accomplishments, her home, and her power. Tomorrow, I would meet with the Wilkins Foundation to finalize the research wing bearing my name. Next week, I would begin my new role as Director of Innovation in Pediatric Care. And in between, I would oversee the restoration of my home, ensuring it honored its history while embracing the future. The Wilkins Foundation headquarters occupied a beautifully restored textile mill along the Providence waterfront. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the space in natural light, reflecting off polished hardwood floors. I sat across from Dr. Eleanor Wilkins herself, a legendary figure in pediatric medicine and the Foundation's founder. "Eleanor, I cannot tell you how pleased we are that you reconsidered our offer," Dr. Wilkins said, sliding a portfolio across the table. "After your keynote address, our board voted unanimously to increase your grant funding by 20%. The publicity surrounding your work has only reinforced what we already knew. You are the foremost expert in pediatric pain management." I opened the portfolio, scanning the updated terms. $2.4 million over 3 years, a dedicated research team, state-of-the-art facilities, and housing near the research centre. "This is incredibly generous," I said, truly moved. Dr. Wilkins smiled. "It is well deserved. And frankly, long overdue." She leaned back, studying me. "I've followed your work for years, even when it was published under a pseudonym." I blinked. "You knew?" She chuckled. "The medical community is smaller than people realize, especially in specialized fields. Your writing style, your methodologies, they were distinctive. I suspected E.J. Marcus was a pen name, though I respected your choice to remain anonymous. For years I had let Richard's reputation eclipse my own, and yet here sat one of the most respected minds in pediatric medicine, telling me my work had always stood out. Dr. Wilkins folded her hands. "You've consistently undervalued your contributions, Eleanor. A common pattern among women in medicine, particularly of our generation." I swallowed, suddenly overwhelmed. Our generation, doctor. Wilkins had built her career during a time when female physicians were rare, when they had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. "Now, about the wing dedication," she continued, turning to a set of architectural renderings. "The Eleanor Anderson Wing for Pediatric Pain Research will occupy the east section of our main building. Construction is already underway." The renderings showed a beautifully designed space, light-filled treatment rooms, research laboratories, a central atrium. At the entrance, a plaque with my name. I exhaled. "It's overwhelming." "Doctor," Wilkins gave me a knowing look. "Recognition can be disorienting when you've spent a lifetime avoiding the spotlight, but you'll get used to it." Driving back to Brookfield, I reflected on her words. Had I been reacting to Richard and my children's betrayal? Or was I finally acting with intention? The answer became clearer as I pulled into the driveway of Olivia's brother's craftsman house, my sanctuary. For the first time in decades, I was making decisions without calculating how they affected everyone else. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing. I wasn't sacrificing. I was making decisions for myself. My home is being restored.